I'm Lynelle Long. I was born in Vietnam and I came to Australia as a 5-month-old baby. My white Australian parent flew to Vietnam, picked me up in the middle of the war, brought me home, and I grew up in rural Australia on a dairy farm. And life was pretty tough there because, there weren't many around me who looked like me. And Australia had just come out of the White Australia policy time. So culturally, socially, it was a pretty challenging time to grow up here. States can help us to restore our identity rights by providing DNA testing and encouraging that in our birth countries so that our families have access to it, and helping our birth families know that we actually, some of us do want to find them. Currently, from what we've experienced around the world is that a lot of states unfortunately tell the birth families that they're not allowed to reach out and have contact with us. And that is completely contradictory to what our community lives. In fact, I would say that as high as 80 to 90% of our inter-country adoptee community actually wants to reunite or at least make contact with biological family, because from a basic human, kind of point of view, we have such a desire to know the truth of who we are, who do we look like, why did they give us up if they did, and just even on a very basic level are they okay, So when you're left wondering with all these questions all your life, it really does affect adoptees from a very much a mental health point of view, especially when access to that knowledge is prevented and blocked in a very active way. I always say that adoptees have a turbulent life whether we get contacted by our birth families or not. I think, in fact, some of that turbulence that we experience in that adolescent, really vulnerable period of our life is enhanced by the fact of not having knowledge and access to our origins and knowing who we are or why, we've been given up. It's such a vulnerable time in our life. And I would argue that the truth would actually enable us to move through that turbulence in a far healthier manner than what the majority of us are experiencing so far. I think if a teenager was allowed the choice to have that contact or not, and to even just know that their birth family is reaching out to them, that can just help to relieve some of the emotional turmoil, the endless questions, the constant feeling of, did they really reject me? Why do they not want me in their life anymore? Like they just have these endless questions that really weigh them down and make them feel very depressed and suicidal. And I would argue that they need to at least have a choice. If that birth family is reaching out, it is wrong, I believe, and unethical to prevent that child from knowing that just because they're underage. Don't underestimate how able we are to process the truth of our story. And we really do have a right to know that regardless of what age we are, I believe.